pick up a little bit of pace, members. We've got a next really meaty area looking at congestion charging. Caroline.
Thank you. Yes, looking at congestion charging or road pricing. The first question, how could the introduction of a road pricing scheme help TfL to reduce congestion? And just as a rider to that, given the evidence that we've already heard from you this morning, are we asking the right question about reducing congestion? Because we've heard Ian speaking about, the numbers of people using the streets on foot and needing to allocate the space for that. We've heard Steve talking about congestion reaching an equilibrium and there being a certain amount of congestion always. So should we be asking if a road pricing scheme would help TfL to allocate space for getting people around more efficiently?
Do you want to go first? In terms of road pricing, it's just worth clarifying that there is no major work underway within TfL on an expansion to the road pricing scheme in central London. There is no active project there at all. And I personally think it's unlikely to figure significantly in a new mass transport strategy. There may be a reference to it, but in terms of, if you think about the first mass transport strategy back in 2001, it was the kind of flagship policy statement. We're not in that period anymore now. Having said that, I think there are two areas where we are looking at pricing, but it's to achieve slightly different objectives to the narrow one about congestion. So there's two areas we're looking at. One is Silvertown, where with the Blackwall Tunnel you have chronic congestion problems there, and we're looking at tolling at Blackwall Tunnel in order to pay for Silvertown, and Silvertown will be charged as well. And that's a way of providing extra capacity and funding it, but also not ensuring it doesn't generate extra traffic. And I know that will be a big issue in the hearing that's coming up. And the other thing I'd emphasise in terms of pricing to achieve different objectives is the announcement that they made yesterday on a whole series of air quality initiatives in terms of the T-charge or the emission surcharge, which is a £10 supplement to older, dirtier vehicles, and also the earlier introduction of ULEZ and maybe the bigger introduction of ULEZ. Again, it's a kind of form of charging for if you don't have a clean vehicle, you will pay a supplement. So I think it's not a narrow debate about road pricing dealing with congestion. It's about pricing dealing with other policy objectives, and principally it's dealing with air quality issues.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come back on the initial question?
Yeah, I think if the leaders of any city or country were really serious about wanting to solve congestion in intense areas, there's really only one way to do it, and that's to selectively constrain people's ability to drive at those times and in those places where congestion occurs. The current congestion charge, I think a number of other people, I use the phrase, and I think some of the others have described it as a blunt instrument, which it is. It was done for understandable political reasons at the time to gain acceptance, but it has a perverse incentive almost, once you've paid for the day, to make maximum use of it. Now, over time, there's going to be an important need to intensify the centres in outer London, with the rapid population growth. So some of the sort of central London type problems you're going to start to see more of in outer London. And so I would suggest that people need to be thinking about these sorts of issues in the longer term. But if you really wanted to solve congestion, the only really effective way to do it is to have some sort of more nuanced, more targeted form of road pricing, obviously over a wider area than we have at the moment. If people don't want that, if it is politically too difficult, then what they are saying is, we're happy to live with congestion. It's as simple as that, I'm afraid.
Very clear. Ian, did you want to
I think, yes, what we're going through at the city is very similar to things that Steve said. But I think evaluating both the size of the zone and also when it operates. Having sort of worked and lived in London for 35 years, I can see that London is now a very different place to the London that first experienced the congestion charging zone. And therefore it's done a job that actually needs to be looked at, to be made a lot smarter and more effective. And as Steve said, it's that balance of acceptability, because people want a very different, well, it's certainly being expressed to me, and the pressure coming down to me from the politicians, a very different experience of life. And that's happened quite quickly as well. So we're talking about movement, which is the whole thing about congestion, but it's actually balancing that up with the sort of world and the place that people want as well. And therefore there are many more trade-offs. I find that in the work that I do, just at a small scheme level, many more trade-offs as to whether something is acceptable or not. Whereas before it used to be quite sort of binary. It was about movement and was it good or bad, and then the decision-making was wrapped around that. So with all of that, sort of what people wanting is very different, I think it moves into the realm where the congestion charge, as it currently stands, has to be reviewed.
Thank you.
Sorry, just wanted to add that whilst the congestion charge benefits inner central London, some of the inner London boroughs that just sit outside it don't benefit very much. If you look at the quality map and the congestion map as well, just outside the congestion zone is pretty bad. So any road charging needs, or any tightening of the congestion zone needs to look at expansion to cover the inner London boroughs, because as I said, a lot of the inner London boroughs at the moment are putting and implementing quite a lot of initiatives to reduce car ownership, car use, to bring about their behavioural change, move people on more sustainable forms of transport. But as I said, the traffic does originate outside those boroughs, so we need to look at, as has been mentioned, selective road pricing, smart pricing that will discourage car use into those in the London boroughs that are not within the congestion zone currently. So as part of potentially part of the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone to bring about to introduce selective road charging to reduce car use.
Thank you. So what we're hearing is actually that there could be a way to use. I think I'm hearing that the current congestion zone is not a nuanced enough instrument to reduce traffic. We know that the Mayor is looking at bringing in a T-charge to deal with the most polluting vehicles. We're hearing sort of across the board interest in reducing traffic, reducing the number of journeys. Is there a way to use a broader road pricing scheme sort of across a much bigger area that could actually deliver more space? I think Ian was talking about thinking about the places that people want to live and work. Is there a way to use road pricing to deliver a London that uses its streets more efficiently to deliver for people what they need?
As I said, there is no active work on a wider road pricing scheme beyond the current C2 scheme. We are not looking at that at all. The areas we're looking at are using pricing to achieve a different objective, which is principally around air quality. And initially we're focused on the T-charge or the commission surcharge. If we extend ULEZ to the North and South Circular, that is a massive expansion of the current zone. I think it's 28 times the size, so it is a huge, will have huge implications for the air quality of London. I think there may also be issues that we need to look at about its impact on volume of vehicles and and potentially even congestion levels as well. But I'd go back to what I said at the start, really, about one of the great things about what's happened in London over the last 15 years. It is this substantial shift away from the private car, a 10% shift from private car to sustainable transport modes. Congestion charge clearly had a role to play in that, but in my view, the most important determinant of that shift in behaviour is the quality of the public transport offer that improves substantially there. So I think sometimes it's easy to say you can only deal with congestion by road pricing. I don't agree with that. I think you can do, that is a tool, clearly, but providing a credible and affordable alternative through the public transport network is really, really important, and you don't get people to move away from their private car unless they've got something credible as an alternative to go to, and that's what was good about the congestion charge in 2003, but it's something, that's not the only reason that 10% of the trips have gone away from the car to more sustainable modes.
Mm-hmm. Steve?
That's one thing. I was going to say, I've agreed with nearly everything these guys have said so far until I heard that. It's quite right that, there has been a very substantial modal shift. The improvement to public transport was a big part of that. But what I've found looking at cities internationally is that improvements don't actually make much difference in themselves, right? Unless there is also constraint of some kind. So you can improve your public transport network if there is no constraining factor, usually via the road network, then what that's more likely to do is just generate more travel. Now, of course, what has happened in London and a number of other cities is that the improvement has been done in a circumstance where there was a constrained road capacity. But whereas if that really was a solution to congestion, why is congestion in London getting worse at the moment? I think what Alan's talking about, that is modal shift. And London has achieved modal shift successfully, but that's a completely different issue from congestion, which, I go back to this equilibrium issue.
So, and that goes back to the initial question that I asked, which is, are we asking the wrong question? Should we be asking about how we reduce traffic rather than how we tackle congestion?
In most cases, I would say yes. If you want to solve congestion, I'd come back to, and I think several of the other witnesses have said this, targeted road pricing is really the only effective way to do it. If that's politically not possible, then, frankly, I would say, I downgrade congestion as one of your objectives. Don't pretend that you can solve a problem that you can't. If the tools to solve the problem are too politically unattractive.
Could we just pick up on the technological challenges or barriers to implementing road pricing? If there were the political will to tackle congestion, and we're hearing it needs to be tackled through a road pricing mechanism, what would be the technological barriers to implementing road pricing?
I'm not sure that... I don't really think the technological barriers are as great as people make them out to be sometimes. I think if you were going to introduce a congestion charging scheme now, you would not use the technology you've got there now. You would not use the cordon or the cameras. Because technology has advanced a lot and there are more sophisticated ways of managing a scheme like that. I think one of the interesting things we need to think about for any substantial expansion of the ULEZ scheme to the North and South Circular is that debate about what technology we use, what is the method of enforcement we use for such a scheme that is so much bigger than the original congestion charging scheme. So I don't see it as an impediment. I see it as an opportunity, really, to use the best and most available technology that's out there now. But I think the reality is, everyone accepts that if you're going to do the CC scheme now, it would be very different in terms of maybe the same boundary, but in terms of the technology, it would be very different, I'm sure.
there is, the sort of technologies that you would need to use in order to track vehicles for some sort of variable scheme do sometimes raise issues about privacy.
Yes.
There has to be a lot of information collection, and that was an issue which I gather was featured in the decision making in Hong Kong as one of the reasons why they decided not to go down that route, because of the political sensitivities of that.
Just one other question on the road pricing. In terms of, for TfL, if there was road pricing, or perhaps from the ultra-low emission zone charging, presumably that is a potential for people driving to contribute to the overall pot of money that TfL has. Have you calculated what you might have to spend, and would that be used on things to help people travel differently?
Well, as I said, there's no active work on a road pricing scheme for all of London, so we haven't calculated any income. But in terms of ULEZ expansion, we have been looking at the finances there. And it's, I think I mentioned this at the Environment Committee I was at recently. If you look at it over a kind of 5-10 year cycle, that scheme is highly likely to lose money. But that's principally because you're seeking compliance and a change in behaviour, and at the start you will probably be getting a net income because vehicles are not as clean as you want them to be. But the objective of the scheme is not to make money; it is to get people to change their behaviour to use cleaner vehicles and not pay the charge, and so that we get cleaner air. So there has been some there is some financial money underway for ULEZ expansion. It is very difficult as well to predict the level of behaviour change and the pace of behaviour change, given that we're going into very different parts of the capital than we previously dealt with before.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next area. I've got Tom and Gary.